It's hard to imagine saying something that hasn't been said about Resident Evil 4. Widely considered one of the best games of all time, one of the most influential, essentially inventing modern gaming on its own, and maybe only rivaled by Doom, Dragon Quest, Super Mario Bros., and Ocarina of Time, it's been talked about to death. And really, it's hard not to fall in love with. It really is fantastic. It wasn't an easy journey to get there. Resident Evil 4's development was a titanic disaster, really, going through 4 major cancelled iterations that we know about before finally coming together as a GameCube exclusive for some reason. In 2005, Shinji Mikami, creator of Resident Evil, famously said, "Resident Evil 4 will definitely release only on GameCube. If it comes to another console, I will cut my head off." My man has apparently been making games headless for 2 decades now, as Resident Evil 4 is a game on almost as many consoles as Doom, and is in the same ballpark as Skyrim and GTA 5. It wouldn't even be a full year before Resident Evil 4 dropped on PS2 with additional content, and in 2007 it had its first PC release, published by not Capcom, but Ubisoft. One which is apparently not very good, as it had a lot of issues with lighting, used the pre-rendered PS2 cutscenes, and had some control issues. A month after that, Resi 4 would hit the Wii as Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition, which features pointer aiming that a lot of people swear by, all of the motion-controlled QuickTime events much less so. In 2009, the game, only 4 years old at this point, would be ported in mostly its entirety to iPhone and iPad, as well as the Brazilian Android-based console Gazebo, with a lot of downgrades, and this version would reach Android by 2013. In 2011, the game reached Xbox 360 and PS3 as Resident Evil 4 HD, a port of the Wii version with widescreen polished controls, which also led to Resident Evil 4 Ultimate HD Edition, a newer, better PC port based on the Xbox 360 version. This version would then go on to be ported back to the Xbox One and PS4 in 2016, and then this same version would come to Nintendo Switch in 2019. Then in 2021, a VR version was made for the Oculus Quest 2, leading us to a GameCube game ported to Wii, with the PS2 features stapled on, ported to the Xbox 360, ported to PC, ported back to Xbox One, ported to Switch, and Facebook VR. Got all that? Okay, good. And that's before we even touch the remake. It's a lot. Resident Evil 4 started life as, Resident Evil 3, being directed by future Clover and Platinum head Hideki Kamiya, who had just gotten off of directing Resident Evil 2, although it was quickly scrapped to refocus efforts on the upcoming PS2, which led to then spin-off Resident Evil Gaiden, aka Resident Evil 1.9, aka Resident Evil 2.1, to be rebranded as Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Kamiya's now Resident Evil 4 was very different from its predecessors. Set in a gothic castle, the game followed Tony Redgrave, the superhuman son of the main antagonist of the first game, Oswald Spencer, had dynamic cameras instead of fixed cameras, and was an action game first before a horror game. This is a picture of what Tony looked like. You've probably played this version of Resident Evil 4. It's Devil May Cry. It's just Devil May Cry. And so it was back to the drawing board. The next attempt at Resi 4 was the castle version, carrying over the idea of exploring an old Spencer castle, but focusing on a giant enemy called the Black Fog, a mass of tentacles that would patrol the castle and infect Leon from Resident Evil 2, now the main character, while Leon befriended one of Spencer's experiments, a girl and her dog, and protected them. The impetus for the cancellation seemed to largely be that the Black Fog was too ambitious. The GameCube couldn't render it in a way that worked, and the game's completed script would go on to be used as the base for a Capcom game you probably haven't played, Haunting Ground, a horror game about a girl and her dog. Despite being shown off at TGS 2002, the game's reappearance at E3 2003 would be an entirely new game again, one inspired by Jacob's Ladder and Silent Hill, a more surreal horror game where Leon would be infected with a virus that gave him frequent hallucinations, swapping the layout of rooms, spawning enemies, and this one never became a game, as the GameCube clearly couldn't handle hot swapping Leon to different rooms without loading, and as such this build died too, and became the final fourth mysterious version called the zombie version, which was closer in line with Resident Evil's zombie horror of the first 3 entries, which Shinji Mikami thought was too boring and repetitive, leading him to finally take on directing the game himself, and landing us at what we now know as Resident Evil 4. Inspired by Onimusha 3, the game would take on an action lean and innovate on the shooter genre with a proper over-the-shoulder camera for its third-person shooting, but seemingly came together fairly nicely from this point, so we can move on to what the game actually is. Resident Evil 4, it plays like every game you've played in the era of video games 2, post-Resident Evil 4 Boogaloo. Dead Space, yep, that's Resi 4. It even follows basically the same structure. Gears of War, Resi, Uncharted, Last of Us, Dark Souls, Resi. Any game with QuickTime events, inventory management, cinematic aspirations, over-the-shoulder camera angles, you know it. Resi 4 takes a more action lean than its predecessors. Enemies are aggressive, fast, and varied, and while resource management still factors in, it's less the game and more a tension device. Hell, pretty much every decision is made to increase tension. Perhaps the one thing in the game that doesn't feel modern is having to stand in place to shoot. It's commitment to an action. You better make that shot quick and make it count, or bail out. Maybe take a hit for your indecision and reposition. Despite how much of an action man Leon is, and the fairly powerful weaponry he gets to use, there's a sense of danger, even in one-on-one encounters, as enemies dodge and weave and lunge and throw stuff. Resi 4 isn't as horror-focused as its predecessors, but it certainly gets the tension right, and when the atmosphere hits, just sometimes, it sure feels like a horror game. Speaking of tension, the new inventory is genius, and it's insane that Resident Evil is like, nah, after this. Each item in this game is given a size in blocks. Most items are 1 or 2, but guns often have wacky shapes and sizes, forcing you to make decisions. Even sorting your inventory optimally, you're going to be tight on room, and the process of sorting optimally can be kinda tedious, but there's a tension created by it, and a pretty constant one. There will come at least one time where you're stuck making a decision to leave something behind, dropping ammo for healing perhaps, but you're going to linger on the what-ifs. This also brilliantly ties into the shopping system. The merchant, the one and only friendly face in the world. Well, maybe not one and only. Money is a good source of tension here. Every gun in the game can be upgraded, usually with power, rate of fire, capacity, reload speed, and a special upgrade for maxing a gun out, plus other useful stuff pops up for purchase. Mostly guns, but also stuff like capacity upgrades for storage, which are maybe the most valuable thing to buy, reducing the tension of choice in inventory, but also damning you to worse weapons for the time being as you're spending money on things that aren't upgrades. Of course, money is also a good incentive for exploration. While the game is linear, no longer quite the little puzzle boxes of games past, there are very often nooks and crannies to dig through, optional puzzles, and avoidable mini-bosses that drop treasures, some of which can be combined to further multiply their value, incentivizing a constant flow of pushing into extra areas at the cost of health and ammunition for more money. The game's economy isn't perfect, of course. I don't know if there's a game that has one that is, but there's a lot of min-maxing you can do early on by dragging the starter weapons along that makes money significantly less of a burden later on, and eventually the enemy count gets high enough that it becomes a free-for-all in the last act, which is a hell of a lot of fun, honestly. Another source of tension is Ashley, the on-again, off-again escort character who some people really hate because they're bad at the game. Ashley is really manipulable. She either follows you or stays put when you ask, and will cower when confronted, letting her usually dodge damage. It's not guaranteed. You're occasionally going to lose an herb or even get sent back to a checkpoint because Ashley doesn't dodge, but it's good enough. And if an enemy picks her up and walks off with her, it's also over. But in a solid 90% of rooms in this game, you can park her in the back while you clean up. It's not until later that she needs to be a little more micromanaged as enemies gain the ability to spawn behind her. She's an element that offsets how crazy overpowered you can become by forcing you to consider someone who can't riot shotgun the average enemy in half. As for combat, I've spoken on the tension, but there are a lot of quirks, primarily in how hardy Ganados tend to be. Body shots are usually not great. Headshots stun enemies well, and stuns set them up for melee attacks, which are incidental crowd control as well, knocking back other nearby enemies and damaging them, and the kick is surprisingly strong. Arm shots and knee shots can also disarm enemies or temporarily stun them, but they are quite a bit harder to make, as you can imagine. Early on, the knife is also a nice pinch of bonus damage on downed enemies, or to deflect axes out of the air if you don't have time to shoot, although its usage falls off quickly and heavily, and by the time the secret knife upgrade happens, the game never tells you about it, so you probably don't even know that happens. It just doesn't end up mattering very much. There's a funny little balance in the game, another part of the tension game, I guess. Every action is high risk, high reward until the better guns come into the picture, and even that remains with mini-bosses, of which there are many. Ammo is very abundant for the pistol, and nailing tricky headshots and moving in close is a great way to handle even small groups. Unless you're in excess and can afford to spend something stronger, there's a very good chance that the best option is pistol headshots and kicks even into the endgame. On the topic of weapons, the several weapon types mostly operate in non-linear growth with very few side grades, although I'm ignoring the bonus weapons unlocked by beating the game or through Mercenaries, which are mostly just unlimited ammo killing machines or other silly things like that, although a couple of them are just kind of good guns. The pistol has the most branches. The handgun functions for the early game, but even maxed out is not good enough later on. Instead, seeing replacement with 3 later guns that all have a little something. The Red 9 is my favorite, most people's really. It hits the hardest by a long shot, can be steadied immensely by adding the stock at the cost of a good chunk of your inventory space. It's basically a tiny rifle at that point, but one that uses the most abundant ammo in the game. Head go pop pop pop. The Punisher is one of the weakest guns in the game, but has piercing rounds which can pass through 3 enemies, or 5 at the special upgrade, and can pass through the shield some enemies have. It's a very niche weapon given the efficiency of headshots with any pistol, but I'm sure someone has had some luck with it. The Blacktail's the most standard handgun, in between in damage, but the fastest firing and the most stable. It's a safe bet, but not hugely exciting. Pistol choice is pretty important. It's the bread and butter of everything that happens in this game. Everything else is secondary. Also, the Red 9 is the correct and most fun choice. The Magnums are very weird. They're objectively great weapons. The Broken Butterfly is literally only beaten out in raw power by a rocket launcher. The Killer 7 is a bit faster but less powerful. Both are good, but are a huge ask for resource management. Magnum ammo is extremely rare and limited, and while the Butterfly especially shreds bosses, it eats up a lot of space for something that's useful once every few hours. And it's not like you can give up the pistol for it, you're just not going to get enough Magnum ammo. Besides, I have a bias for the other 2 power weapons. The base shotgun is fantastic early on. Its ability to shred common Ganados and knock down mini-bosses is invaluable. Its 2 upgrades are both great separately. The riot gun is absolutely my favorite gun in the game. It's stronger, has better range, and is perfect for eliminating entire large groups in an emergency. It also happens to be great against a lot of bosses. The Striker is even shorter range than the base shotgun, but also has more power, and when max holds 100 rounds, which is really funny, and absolutely saves space in your case since you just do not have to have shotgun ammo laying around. I don't know if that actually makes it good, per se, but it is funny. The riot gun, easily my pick. Both rifles are pretty insane. I don't even know if you could call one an upgrade over the other. The bolt action has more power, but frankly to an extent that's pretty overkill unless you're using it against bosses. The semi-auto has plenty of power to pop the heads of any common enemy, and fires much faster, reloads faster, works at medium range or even close range as needed, despite the field of view loss from scoping. I love the semi-auto rifle. There are so many times when you can start a section off with several enemies headless with no risk of damage at all. Health is much more important than ammo on average, even rare ammo. Grenades and incendiary grenades are oh shit buttons, flashbangs are a lot more situational oh shit buttons, and rocket launcher are insta-kill buttons, even on bosses, even on the final boss, and at an extremely high cost. You get one shot and the rocket launcher is discarded forever, and it costs $80,000. The TMP is the only SMG in the game. Fully upgraded, it's another nice oh shit button for crowds of standard enemies, but it's hard to justify lugging it around in its ammo unless you're willing to go down its entire upgrade path. And the mine launcher fires sticky grenades, which is good if very limited by ammunition, as these odd one-offs tend to be. They all have some niche use, I'm sure, but nothing beats the classics in my eyes. Another quick thing to note is that the modern aiming reticle had not come into play yet. I'm sure there were games with reticles before, I can think of a few, but the idea of just having one floating at all times in a third-person game was not a thing. So instead, weapons have a laser sight on them that gives you a surprisingly detailed amount of accuracy. There's a sway to it. You do have to manage that, but if the red dot is on an enemy, they will get hit. It's interesting. It's definitely a crutch, but I guess when you're making the first third-person shooter, you kind of have to figure something out. I guess to wrap up general gameplay stuff, I may as well talk about the purest gameplay in the game, the Mercenaries, unlocked by simply beating the game in all of its different versions. In most ways, this is a standard horde mode, but it does have a few cool twists. The goal is to survive out the timer, but chests around the arena offer extra time and brief periods of point multipliers. The arenas, the village, the castle wall, the island village, and a unique dock level all feature enemies pertinent to their areas and mini-bosses that appear after a bit of time has passed. The last area has a unique mini-boss in the giant chainsaw, who is bigger, faster, and less stunnable than the normal-sized chainsaw. The mode offers a few characters. Leon gets the riot gun and blacktail, a little slim on stuff. Ada has the semi-auto rifle, Punisher, and TMP, which would become her default loadout later, plus incendiary grenades, but can't knife until the Wii version, for some reason. Krauser has the bow, which lets him operate in silence, and every 45 seconds can shoot a mutant tentacle out to destroy enemies, and his knife is stronger than Leon's. Hunk, a character from Resident Evil 2 who continues to appear mostly because he has the best theme song in the game, has a special TMP and can insta-kill anything with his melee, and Wesker has a mountain of explosives, the handgun, the semi-auto rifle, and the Killer 7 Magnum. As you can guess, he's the last character you get. To tell the truth, I really struggled getting into Resi 4 Mercenaries. The game is just a bit too chaotic for me, I think, frequently boxing you in with waves and waves of enemies and starting you with the worst character. Hunk and Krauser seem like they'd be an absolute joy to try, but the mode is definitely for the dedicated and diehards, needing a very precise grasp on how and when enemies spawn. In a mode that's already one I don't tend to love, it brushed me off fairly quickly, although I have de-rusted a lot by the time of my third playthrough, so maybe some time on the Switch version would do me good. For the record, I also played the GameCube and PS2 versions. May as well hit on the differences between the versions while I'm here. The PS2 version adds an amateur mode as a counter to the hard mode, professional, but this was a later edition for Europe and Japan, so it wasn't in the American release, although this amateur mode would carry over into all future versions. There's also a new super weapon after beating the game on professional, the Plagas removal laser, which, it just wins the game for you instantly. The later HD editions heavily modernized the control, giving aiming over to the right stick, which is kind of disorienting at first. When I first played the Switch version, I kept trying to aim with the left stick and I just wouldn't move, and I was like, oh, but quickly falls into feeling more like every game that came out after this one, in a good way. But otherwise, the HD version mostly just sees a few little bonuses and extra weapons and balancing tweaks added in the Wii version. I guess to wrap all this up, holy hell, this is a fun game. This is a pretty quick overview of the game, but every little aspect comes together so well. While horror is slipped away for action, tension remains front and center, standing still for shots, protecting Ashley, making inventory concessions, dealing with a parade of enemies and mini-bosses. The game is tough, constantly pushing you to be careful, to be paranoid, but is also very open to you breaking it in half with good play and min-maxing. The game has so much variety across its 3 acts, and it's just so fucking enjoyable to go through. If one that does eventually start to wear on you, it can be an exhausting game. I love Resident Evil 4, and we haven't even gotten to everything else. Resident Evil 4 looks a generation beyond what everyone but Nintendo and Square Enix were doing, especially when considering the realistic art style, with only slightly stylized characters. The original GameCube version is honestly a marvel, especially when it comes to character models. Leon is center focus at all times, so he kinda had to be good, but he's just so detailed. Limited in actions, admittedly, which helps quite a bit, but still wrapped up in an endless collection of surprisingly large and detailed areas. The map is quarantined off fairly often with doors and the likes to keep things reasonable, but the village, for example, is a fairly broad map with 3 main enterable buildings, the tower and the half barn, chickens and cows running around, numerous enemies, a fire and a chainsaw at some point, and appears later with rain and darkness and still looks just as good. And this area pales in comparison to segments of the castle and the island, especially the first fortress. This game is realistic yet dense, areas are compact but have little things to see everywhere, enemies are abundant, and it all runs basically flawlessly. The in-engine cutscenes are also absolutely fantastic. They certainly don't go all out as games would a few years later, like this game's successor Resi 5 with its virtual camera movements, but they have great choreography far exceeding what you get to do in the game. There's just so much going right for this game. Ashley's detailed and she's endearing in a dorky kid way, which is good because if she was insufferable I'd care a lot less. The voice cast is fucking fantastic. The classic Resi camp is much less present, I think, but it is still present in some small doses, especially when it comes to Leon's quips and one of the antagonists, and there are some absolutely golden lines.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
While the story is played largely straight, and I think is quite interesting. A little slow paced, but the unraveling mystery of the Plagas draws you in really well. Every gun sounds great too, especially the heavy hitters like the riot gun and the rifle, but it also extends to stupid little things the enemies say and do. You know it's a good sounding game when the sound of a chainsaw makes you clench, and while I'm at it, the music is pretty good too. Most of it is pretty cinematic, blending into the background as it's meant to do, but the battle themes tend to be great, especially when it comes to Krauser. But I think the save room theme, it's mostly like the shop theme now. It's maybe the best in the series by far, and the credits song is so different from everything else. I love it. You'll know when I play it over the conclusion. It's great. I should also touch on the later versions that I played. The PS2 version is a bit of a downgrade, to say the least. The PS2 just wasn't as strong as the GameCube, and the aliasing is incredibly noticeable. The highs of the game are still there, but it looks generally worse, and the downgrading of the cutscenes to very compressed FMVs is absolutely brutal, especially when it comes to the bonus chapter, which is still stuck with those rough FMVs to this day because they were never animated in engine. On the other hand, the Switch and all of the other HD versions available today are fucking fantastic. The game still looks pretty good, a bit of noticeable texture quality stuff aside, and making it 16:9 to better suit modern displays with crispy HDMI displays is just fantastic. It's also far and away the easiest way to play the game nowadays, which certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, it's the best looking version even if the GameCube controller is just so comfy to me. Resident Evil 4 is divided into 6 chapters, although those chapters kind of blend together into 3 generally recognized acts, as pretty much everything in the game dramatically shifts every few hours. The enemies shift, the story shifts, the gameplay shifts, the tone shifts. The first act is the village, and it's by far the most well-remembered part of the game, and probably the best in many ways. It's slower, more atmospheric, a little less silly, less intense, and more grounded. Not to say it doesn't explode into craziness, it is Resident Evil, but those moments punctuate better in comparison, perhaps. The year is 2004. Leon Kennedy has kinda moved on from the destruction of Raccoon City, a little more worn down by the world, but still almost naively throwing himself at protecting everyone, and is now a member of Stratcom, in charge of protecting the president and his family. His daughter Ashley has been kidnapped and taken to Spain by a mostly unknown religious cult, Los Illuminados, who have control over the whole region. About 10 minutes into arriving to Spain, Leon's police escorts are thrown off a cliff and he finds a cabin in the woods housing one guy who seems pretty normal at first, but deep down he's really, really angry and likes keeping piles of viscera and bones in his house. Part of what makes the village interesting is its out-of-time quality, in an Amish style, I mean. The Ganados have largely rejected modern advancements. There's a quality of unfamiliarity. Not a city of straight lines and buildings, but scattered shacks and farms. There's a constant feeling of unpredictability in the villagers that jump out and the bear traps they've left behind, and loneliness as you venture into the woods between small locations. There's no comfort of the structure of the modern world. It also happens to add a tinge of sadness. Pictures of a more normal life can be found around, journals and diaries belonging to villagers as their simple lives collapse, as their neighbors become inducted into the cult, animalistic and violent. It makes the village not just an unfamiliar and hostile land, but one that used to be something else. The rot caused by the cult left us in this empty and dead world as well. Perhaps the most iconic moment of Resident Evil 4 happens only a few minutes in. The village center is the heart of the section, the largest settlement of Ganados in the region, and they're in the midst of a ritual burning of a police officer when Leon arrives. Upon being detected, the village is swarmed by a seemingly endless pile of villagers. There's buildings to hide in, but they don't stay safe for long. Finding the shotgun feels like a tide-turning moment, but immediately triggers the appearance of the chainsaw, a large mini-boss that kills Leon immediately on contact. Usually. The fight is overwhelming and tense. It's a drain on resources that you don't really have yet that ends when it ends, although it ends faster the more you kill, and killing the chainsaw is extremely difficult on a first playthrough, but drops a rare treasure to make the near future easier. A lot of mini-bosses work this way, very few are absolutely necessary to kill, but pushing your luck is the best path. Putting yourself in the middle of all this tension is what eases it later. The battle's also meant to feel weird. It ends when the church bell rings, the attack's instantly ending, and it's gone. Absolute banger line. I mean that mostly seriously. The levity from Leon's shitty one-liners keeps things balanced out. They're stupid and usually kind of bad, but they usually hit, and this one especially tells a lot about Leon. The way he kinda justifies or covers up his fear and exhaustion with stupid jokes, and later uses them to comfort Ashley in his own odd way. The first subchapter really is nothing but hits. The farm is more low-key with only a handful of ganados, but establishes the little things. The area is well detailed, with the last of the animals sharing space with rotted crops and corpses. It also establishes a more normal combat flow that's going to be seen throughout the rest of the game before new elements are thrown into the mix. The next area features trip mines that can be deactivated with bullets or turned against enemies, as well as dynamite throwing ganados, for example. There's also the boulder. It's, the first controversial boulder in Resident Evil. QuickTime events were pretty novel at this time. They made the action continue into the cutscenes, the type of action that games couldn't have in gameplay back then. This one looks really, really stupid because it's going at, the flash speeds, but it's maybe the part of the game that's aged the worst. These QuickTime events appear all over the place and prevent you from taking a break and absorbing the story in a way that harms the presentation. In a basement at the far side of the village, Leon finds a man and a man finds him. Chief Mendez is the enforcer of Los Illuminados, once a good man, the Catholic priest of the village, whose house is adorned with pictures of better times, images so impactful that they feature over the credits, who was used by Los Illuminados to turn the entire village. In many ways, he's the first victim of Illuminados and one of its most intimidating members, injecting Leon with something. The man Leon found in the closet is Luis Serra. Roguish, a ladies' man, and a little silly, he's one of the very few kinda allies in this game. A bit flighty and busy with his own things since leaving Illuminados, and trying to correct his overzealous research that led to this, but he comes in and out to help from time to time. However, he's not nice enough to stick around. It's a real testament to Resi 4 that even fairly basic rooms become memorable. The next area begins on a series of bridges and walkways connecting cliffs with small buildings dotted around. The cliffs are fairly large and expansive and loaded with enemies, but it's also the place where the bolt action becomes available if you have enough money. You aren't really meant to go to war here, not entirely. You will eventually have some amount of enemies reach you, but you're more so meant to pick off the huge threats from safety because it's fucking cool. Resi 4 is so dense that I kinda need to move along, but the village especially just has no dull moments. The factory up ahead is a nice bit of world building and ups the intensity quite a bit by mixing enemies and traps together, but frankly I just need to mention it for later. Mendez's manor is a sad place, thinking of how Mendez fell, although I like that they lighten it up with the pissing ganado jump scare and the oven chicken. Also, Mendez gets to slap Leon around some and almost kills him if not for a slight distraction. The church is the first section to have puzzles, just a little bit. They're not a major part of this game usually, appearing from time to time, especially in the middle stretch, but with backtracking mostly absent from this game, they're fleeting sideshows. This is a linear action game that sometimes dumps you out into a connected area. Areas can be cleared of items their first visit almost every time without fail, and you're always moving forward. The first puzzle in the game is simply matching the family crests on a kind of awkward dial that only moves 3 or 4 spaces. It's a little bit more involved than it looks, but not by a whole ton. I just wanted to eulogize the puzzles, I guess. Notably, the church hosts the end of the game's only major side quests. Throughout the early game, blue medallions appear, starting at the farm, and man does the merchant hate those blue medallions. So much so that he'll happily give Leon a punisher for clearing out 10 of them, which is much better than the handgun if nothing else, and a very good source of money if you want to upgrade later. Skipping ahead some, Leon sees the ganados feeding corpses to the lake. Shoot the water a few times to see exactly to what. Del Lago, literally of the lake, is a heavily mutated 20-foot long salamander that lives in the lake. Leon is on a boat for about 30 seconds before it's dragging his boat along as he desperately tries to kill it. Del Lago isn't so much a boss as it is a very fancy QuickTime event. Aim the cursor, spam harpoons, wiggle the stick to dodge stuff, do QuickTime events to not get eaten, and it's also really dynamic and cool. Del Lago pulls the boat around unpredictably, dives and breaches when and if it wants to, and always seems to wiggle away from a well-timed harpoon. It's a great little moment to crank up the energy as day turns to night. Night brings with it emerged plagos, wolves that burst into messes of tentacles like the Thing, and guadañas, villagers with long tentacle-like plagos where their skull used to be that can batter Leon from a distance. Right as the villagers begin to feel a little routine, the game throws a wrench in it, and emerged plagas are a constant consideration. Every single enemy in this game is a potential second, more dangerous one waiting to emerge, and the tension that comes from it is immense for a very long time, even before the other variants start to show up. The reveal is also interesting because before the first one emerges, the plagas are kind of vague. They're eggs, they do some kind of mind control, and they're definitely not good. Seeing one is a pretty good way to know that they're not. After some weird times at the river, Leon finally heads back to the church where Ashley is held and encounters El Gigante, a literal giant morphed by plagas. It's weirder than the salamander, pretty much completely out of left field, although the size of the gates you passed through earlier is a cute little tease, and so silly in Resident Evil. Giant snakes, bugs, and even mutant freaks like Nemesis that already existed in the series, what's one more? Gigantes might be the purest horror in the game, despite being a Tolkien-esque troll monster. It's unsettlingly huge and unavoidable, with massive attacks that make cramped spaces feel even smaller, and with poorly upgraded weapons and limited ammo, it feels like a massive task to tip the giant over to expose its plaga to knife attacks, taking basically every bit of ammo you've saved and earned. It's intimidating and unsettling, but if you were nice enough to save the wolf at the start of the game, you get a cute reunion as the wolf distracts Gigante and gives you some space. It's silly and ridiculous, and a fantastic payoff for going a little out of your way to save someone who needed it, which is the Leon way, and a much needed hand at a time when things are overwhelming. The game won't usually be that kind, but it's the little moments of silliness that help make this game so endearing. Ashley's doing fine, she's a bit afraid at first, but the game is fairly nice at first too, giving you a lot of relative safety to learn her quirks in. Maybe meeting Saddler in the church is a bit too soon though. His right and left hand give plenty of insight into Illuminados, and there's really no build up to the puppet master just showing up. Neither he nor Leon kill each other immediately on the spot because of two entire crossbow guys, who Leon will later slaughter by the dozen, and you can even go back in and wipe these two out after Saddler's gone for some extra goodies. Having Ashley around sucks, and I love it. I've already kinda tipped my hand though. Enemies don't usually target Ashley if Leon is in the vicinity, and leaving her in a corner is usually a pretty safe bet. Even then, the game is going to do its best to make it a pain. She's a constant string tugging at the back of your mind. The solution is to play better, aim more accurately, and use better ammo more often than you'd like. People hate escort quests, they hate my beloved Silent Hill 4 for being one, but Ashley is such a great addition here. As you get more and more powerful, Ashley stays the same, and all you can do is worry about her as enemies get more and more dangerous alongside you. The game drives you back through the familiar spots, the town center, the farm, but Ashley being there along with more powerful enemies, traps, and all that, it feels like a literal day and night to see how fast things have gotten worse, and the game really rubs that in at the cabin. Even with Luis's help.
I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics too.
Come on, man. That's wildly inappropriate. The standoff is an overwhelming mess of flailing enemies and plagas and confusion. Luis is still in the midst of retrieving something for someone, and Leon and Ashley still need to get out. The entire last section of the village is just stress. You liked one chainsaw? Protect Ashley from two, dumbass. Or maybe a Gigante if you don't like that idea. How about a ski lift ride while getting shot at from the other lifts? Oh, you want to leave? Go get an eye for a retinal scan. Whose eye? Oh. Mendez is, I think, the best chapter ender in the game. He's a hell of a fight and just a nightmare of tension. Mendez extends into a skyscraper centipede man as his spine extends upward, making him even taller and more imposing. He kinda just walks at you menacingly, absorbing bullets like crazy. His spindly spine is his weak point, but the highest damage weapons like the Red 9 rifle have a real hard time getting hits on it. Even if you climb up to the second level, he extends up there too to keep attacking. He's absolutely menacing, especially as the fire in the barn limits breathing room and adds an atmospheric glow. Snapping his spine isn't the end though, his torso and arms just turn into a skittering ceiling demon that drops down on you. The already hard shots to make become a nightmare as he moves faster and faster, as you're forced to stare at the ceiling while walking back and forth to not get killed in seconds. Resident Evil 4 might not be horror, not as much anyway, but it sure as hell is tense, uncomfortable, and I felt scared missing shots every time Mendez wiggled. With a flip truck and a pile of dead ganados, Ashley and Leon make it to the castle. The castle is different. Good different. The castle may be linear, but it's very much got that wackiness of the Spencer mansion. Ramon Salazar's a weird guy. All the Salazars were apparently, and Ramon, unlike Mendez, was never a pillar of the community. He was a juvenile little shit who exploited the villagers and perpetuated the cult, immediately following its new leader. The castle is the spice of life. A hedge maze packed with enemies and wolves Leon needs to travel back and forth through, catapults perched on walls launching flaming boulders that Ashley needs to be swerved through, or you can just shoot the operators. Long detours along side paths for keys, the Garrador, just a raging madman with a Plagas on his spine. He slashes wildly, smashes into walls following noises, and hitting his tiny little Plaga to speed up the fight is very rough and only pisses him off. The game definitely doesn't play nice with your ammo. There are upsides. The riot gun and semi-auto rifle absolutely start to shift the balance in your favor, especially as the castle's loaded with hidden treasures for upgrades. You'll never be fully comfortable, at least not on a first run. It's not that kind of game. For example, the Garrador is one thing, the double Garrador is something entirely different. Puzzles become a much bigger element too, for a while anyway. They're pretty alright. Nothing as devious as in prior games, but small little world puzzles like the dining room break up the action in unique ways. Not long into the castle, Ashley also does whatever this is. It's a nice break to have her gone, admittedly. I feel bad for saying it though. But the castle can be stressful, and she's safe and sound while you're doing other stuff. She even gets her own little section later where you huck lamps at Ganados and get chased by knights. It's fine. It's nice to show her growing a bit, fighting for herself, but it's not a very good section. I much prefer this little bit where she turns cranks to raise the platforms as you provide her cover fire and fight your own battles at the same time. It's a nice twist where your anxiety for Ashley can't be offset by ditching her. Also true in the room just before it, which is just an endless pile of Ganados. So many that it's impossible to just find a corner to leave her in. They will get to her if you try. Throughout the chapter, Luis gets his little hero moments. Ashley and Leon are both beginning to see signs of the parasite and get sick, the first point of the takeover. Luis knows the Plagas well and can offer medicine to hold it off for a while, but is also working to deliver a Plagas sample to one Ada Wong as exchange for leaving the islands. And Ada, of course, is in the employment of Albert Wesker, professional autist who wants the Plagas for assuredly nefarious purposes. Ada's been gone from Leon's life for a while, since Resi 2, and he's a bit standoffish about her essentially faking her death on him, but she clearly cares about him a whole lot, in her own ways. She pretty constantly helps from the shadows, saving Leon from Mendez, offering advice. It's a difficult and interesting dynamic. Ada can be surprisingly sweet in as much of a way as she is capable of it, but that's all for later. Luis also gets a bitter end, just on the brink of doing the right thing. I quite like the abruptness, leaving you allyless as it comes about when things are at their lowest, although once again, Saddler doing this killing himself certainly feels a little weird. Oh, speaking of fun dynamics, Salazar has a hell of a presence. Our little Napoleon with a brainworm has enough personality to carry the whole Illuminados bunch. He's petulant, annoying, and hates being defied. Leon taunts him every step of the way, and unlike how he jokes to himself and Ashley, he's taking the dumbest pointed jabs at Salazar, who hacks your comms every few minutes. Even when he trapdoors Leon into the sewers, Leon gets back at him. The sewers pose the most unique time in the castle, which is really saying something. The claustrophobic tunnels are loaded with Novista doors. Plagas so thoroughly mutated they've become 6-foot tall, acid-spitting insects that can climb on the ceiling, fly, forcing you to look up while another skitters across the floor to you, and turn invisible. They're probably the most lethal common enemy in the game, in part because the glow of their eyes is often the only visible element of them. One grapple is half a health bar, and they come in bunches, just a whole lot at a time. The sewers under the castle feel like they should be a boring diversion, free of the charm and wackiness of the castle regularly, but those fucking bugs are such a fantastic excuse to divert. The back half of the castle doesn't really lose that wacky charm either. If anything, it kinda just gets weirder. The Queen and King Grails, needed to move forward, are locked behind a spiked ceiling trap that leads into disabling a giant drill with a rifle, and a duel against suits of armor stuffed with a plaga that need to be decapitated to get at their squishy bits. Both fantastically weird and silly little scenarios that lead into an underground lab. Verdugo is an odd one. Two exist, one staying with Salazar to the end, one let loose in an old lab to stop Leon, and the whole section is alien. The Verdugo is just a xenomorph. Bulletproof black carapace, long bladed tail, blending in and crawling through vents to ambush, and only stoppable through the use of liquid nitrogen to shatter its armor with bullets. Killing the first Verdugo isn't even necessary. It's arguably a huge waste of ammo, especially should you not have enough to actually finish the job, even despite the extremely valuable treasure it carries. The game expects something very different for the most part. The elevator is coming, don't die for a while. And that's an extremely exciting twist on the semi-invulnerable bosses that prior games had, like Nemesis, even if it's just for a brief section. The mines are a lot more normal than the past few hours of the castle, but do have some standout bits. The minecart is an especially chaotic section. It's essentially a very tiny, segmented arena, one which gives fun opportunities to kill enemies before they can board, as much as it forces you to operate within a few feet of a chainsaw. The double Gigantes fight is a chaotic mess too. You can knock one out by dunking it in the smelting pit, but doing so almost requires actually killing one first, although you can cheese most of this fight by just taking the zip line over and over again. You know, it feels a little cheap to do. Maybe one of the few mistakes this game has as far as gameplay goes. After a torturous elevator ride with this bizarre rolling barrel trap like Donkey Kong, Leon finally gets the satisfying pleasure of fighting Salazar, who merges with his second Verdugo into a giant wall of innards with a mouth and an eye with Salazar inside it, which primarily attacks by slamming down vines and attempting to eat Leon whole. The boss is fine. Most of it is just using quick-time events to dodge its attacks, and the eye is a fairly uncreative target to smash into until Salazar opens his mouth. It is satisfying to lay into him. He deserves it more than most anyone, but the fight is kinda just not that exciting, unfortunately. With Ashley gone again, Leon has one more stop to make, the island off the shore of the mainland, which serves as Saddler's base, and luckily Ada offers most of a ride. The island is usually cited as a low point in Resident Evil 4. I think a big part of that is fatigue. Resident Evil 4 is involved in exhausting games, at times quite difficult, even as it adapts to your skill level, and demanding constant thought. Part of it, though, is the island itself. The Ganados on the island are a modern military, funded by whatever it is Sadler did before he arrived, and serve as a stark contrast to the simple lives they once lived. They have crossbows, rocket launchers, turrets, miniguns, and more. Parts of the island, like the first, are full-blown military installations built into the ruins of whatever came before, and it's a whole lot of combat. Combat, with few breaks on the island's exterior. It definitely wears you down in good and bad ways. The game is so aware of this that there's an entire section where a helicopter comes in to aid you, gunning down most, if not all of the plagas in your path, and leaving you the rewards before poor Mike bites it. Thank you for your service, my friend. I really needed that break. The interiors of the island are where the real meat is. The labs serve largely as smaller combat arenas, true, puzzles are fairly rare, true, but two things carry it. Ashley is back, and the regenerators are going to shred her if you don't get good. Regenerators are the best enemy in the game and single-handedly push the island along. They have a really goofy appearance, floppy, blank-eyed, and slow, kinda like a dead fish. Yet they're so unstoppable, so uncanny, and utilized so well that they become genuinely terrifying. The first one lies motionless as you investigate a bizarre experiment nearby and get a key card, and the second you turn around, boom. You can't kill it yet. That's kinda a lie, but you can't reasonably do it without spending a rocket launcher. Blow its head off, its limbs, it doesn't stop. Slows a little bit maybe, but even if it has to slither, it's going to get you, and all you can do is leave. The trick is the several Plagas embedded within it, located randomly throughout to rebuild it. You need a rifle or another gun that can hold a scope, and to find the thermal scope to have any reasonable hope to kill one, and if you can't figure that out, these lumbering monsters will never leave you alone. Even knowing how to do it, hitting several tiny targets as it unflinchingly approaches is tense. One slip up could mean a real world of pain. The game pushes regenerators hard in the lab. More and more show up together, and in the garbage pit 2 more covered in needles appear, and also require hitting a Plaga that's embedded in their back, which requires some creative positioning to get to, or expending more resources to knock them over first, all while they mindlessly smash at Ashley. There's also a part where Ashley drives a truck while Leon rides in the back. It's, fun. All the good times always have to end. Saddler can stop Leon in his tracks and command Ashley to leave with him. Leon is for the last time alone and faced with Krauser, his former mentor in the military and a man who was abandoned by his government while his whole squad died, save for himself and Leon, which is all seen in Resident Evil The Dark Side Chronicles on the Wii, a game I haven't played. Krauser was a good man, Leon says it himself, but the failed mission drove him to one conclusion. Never rely on anyone, gain enough power to do everything yourself. And that pursuit of power led him to Saddler and mutating himself. The first fight against Krauser is literally 3 minutes of QuickTime events until Ada intervenes. So lengthy that it has its own fucking checkpoint, but Krauser has a good one a little bit later. Before that though, U3, or It, as it's often called, the Illuminados' most disturbing creature, a mass of flesh that vaguely resembles a human attached to a scorpion. It's initially a pursuit enemy, chasing Leon through a collapsing series of containers as he shoots switches to open doors, popping up at the worst times. It borders on a little bit frustrating, but it is a really damn cool section and very, very tense. And the fight with it is a nice little game of cat and mouse as it burrows and reemerges. But that's not what we're all here for. Krauser's the good stuff, probably the best boss in the game. He's dynamic, exciting, and has turned a huge section of the ruins into his playground. As Leon moves through the ruins, flipping switches to progress, Krauser appears. He's fast and attacks mostly with knives, but also uses an SMG at times. I don't think it's always necessary to brawl with him, but it really helps to not get shot in the back while you're busy doing stuff. Each appearance is dangerous, and the big final battle is in a confined space, just giving Krauser everything. Then his arm turns into a giant blade and the real fight starts. He kills you extremely fast, moves way too fast to reasonably target, can deflect bullets with his massive arm thing, and dodges a good majority of your attacks. He's weak to knife attacks in an ironic twist of fate, which can be used to keep him in a corner a little bit, but also makes the fight more intense as it requires sticking close to Krauser, who is insanely deadly at close range. It's the fight that feels the most fair, not against a giant monster that just sucks in all the bullets you can handle in a DPS race, but a mostly man-sized man who lashes out at a world that forgot him. And he even shows a little bit of respect for Leon as he goes, and Leon ends up keeping Krauser's knife in his honor, or maybe his legacy. It deals some amount more damage than the original knife, but not enough to offset how much the knife has fallen off by this point. Leon reunites with Ashley one last time, and Ada, reliable as ever, holds off Saddler while Leon and Ashley remove their Plagas, leading to the final fight with Saddler on top of a mining rig thing? Oil rig? I don't know what this is. I haven't really gotten into Saddler that much up to this point. His plan is pretty simple. Infect the president's daughter with a Plagas, send her back, infect the president, world domination. Why'd he do it? Well, I don't know. He seems to be a true believer, not a cynical peddler of his religion for power, but earnestly believing the Plagas to be a path to godhood or the next step in human evolution, which he's more than happy to indulge in, although he also led Salazar to undo the work of his ancestors in preventing the Plagas from spreading. Like Leon, he's an outsider, and like Leon, he's a disrupting force. Saddler disrupted the simple lives of the Ganados, Leon is disrupting Saddler right back. Saddler isn't that deep. He's the over-the-top James Bondy supervillain pulling the strings from an island lair, which is a fitting character for this game. The final boss is fine. After rescuing Ada, she begins running around while Leon fights Saddler, who mutates into a freaky spider thing. Very cool design. Shooting the eyes on his leg reveals the main eye in his mouth. Shooting and stabbing that kills him. You can also rocket launch the main eye, and that ends the fight instantly. After the first phase, it's the obligatory rocket launcher finale. Ada gives you a freebie to deal the final hit, and it all wraps up. It's certainly not a bad boss. The arena is really cool with bridges that rise and lower to other sections, cutting you off or granting you salvation. The design itself, absolutely incredible, and the scale of the thing is nice too, but it's kinda just another big guy with big glowing weak points at this point in the game. Ada, ever the businesswoman, takes the sample and leaves, having rigged the entire island to explode, but she's nice enough to leave the keys to a jet ski so Leon and Ashley can leave in a fun little section, I guess. And after an awkward proposal, all's well that ends well. The world is saved and the future looks bright. Alongside Mercenaries, the GameCube release had a side story, as was tradition for the series, although Assignment Ada feels very incomplete, standing at just over an hour long, featuring plot in the form of text dumps, and being essentially replaced in the PS2 version, even though it would continue to exist alongside its successor. Ada has a few differences from Leon, most notably she doesn't have a knife for some reason, at least not until the Wii port, but is slightly faster in exchange, and can occasionally use her grappling hook to get around in context-sensitive locations. Plus, she begins the game with a mostly upgraded collection of a Punisher, TMP, and semi-auto. No shops, no saves, although there are checkpoints. The entire subgame takes place across the island as Ada collects 5 Plaga samples. 4 are found throughout the island, and 1 is dropped from Krauser, who apparently survived his encounter with Leon, although he's much harder without a knife and on the tiny bridge that the game gives you to fight him in. Once he's dead again, it's over. Assignment Ada is fine. It's a cute change of pace, but doesn't offer nearly as much as its upgrade would a short time after this game's original release. Separate Ways, introduced in the PS2 version, is a much more proper Ada campaign, following a direct line through her involvement across the game's story, divided into 5 chapters. And she plays much the same as she had in Assignment Ada, but with a few different tools. Primarily in that she has the Blacktail instead of the Punisher, and a unique shotgun which she fires from the hip, making it very awkward for getting headshots, but good for giving her space, which she desperately needs without the knife. She can also save and visit merchants again, although her weapons are unupgradable, so you can only buy a few little trinkets, and she really only needs to save up to get the rifle and TMP. Separate Ways shows the entirety of Ada's concurrent adventure with Leon, mostly at the points where they pass cross, beginning at the village as Leon gets in the initial town square fight, which you can watch unfold partially, and being the one to ring the bingo bell to save him and temporarily hold off the Plagas. Much of Separate Ways is reused content, as is to be expected, but it does branch out as it goes along, just to be expected from a bonus like this. Her second level in the village starts with stopping Mendez from killing Leon and trying to find Luis, the sample keeper. There's nothing too crazy going on, just battles with chainsaws, a gigante. Everything is a bit different for the weapon selection. It's all good. Ada's only chapter in the castle is focused around the hedge maze and a Garador, but also has some Leon interaction. Wesker wants Leon gone, but after Luis dies and Saddler gets the sample, Wesker reconsiders and lets Leon live to serve as a way to get closer to Saddler. Finally on the island, Ada actually gets something new, an entire journey through the docks underneath, with frankly bizarre sections of using anti-air cannons to shoot ships apart. It's a unique section, a bit excessive and over the top, and pretty fun, and builds up to saving Leon from Krauser. Ada's finale is about what you'd expect. Like in Assignment Ada, she fights Krauser, but this time in a more interesting rooftop arena that lets her hookshot between different spots a couple times. She also fights Human Saddler, who kinda just lumbers around, but is only vulnerable in his mouth eye. So it's a neat little accuracy challenge, and she has a very brief time section where she needs to run through the upper levels as Leon takes on Final Saddler to get him the rocket launcher. The extra Saddler fight is definitely a nice bonus, especially since he's unique, but yeah. Separate Ways is a fairly fun extra 2 hours of Resident Evil 4 with a few unique and interesting segments and enough gameplay tweaks to be worth playing around with. The most interesting bit is a hint towards the future, a tease about Wesker's involvement with the S Corporation, which is apparently short for Tricell, although its clear plans for Resident Evil 5 were still fairly light, given how minor the Plagas are in Wesker's grand scheme, I think. I don't know how much Ouroboros relied on the Plagas, there's a bunch of Plagas that show up, but I guess it's interesting to see that there was always an intention to get back to the Wesker storyline, despite Resident Evil 4 unceremoniously starting by saying Umbrella collapsed off screen and isn't a threat anymore. Resident Evil 4 is basically a masterpiece. I'm far from the first to say it, and I'm far from the last who will. The first 2 acts especially are just perfection. The village is beautifully eerie, lonely, and tense, the sad story of a small culture destroyed by a powerful exploiter, and bring in the atmosphere and horror wonderfully, and the castleness has all the camp and wackiness of the original trilogy. Wacky puzzles, insane monsters, a trip through Bowser's castle, a horrendously obnoxious villain to kill. The island definitely struggles in comparison to the first 2 acts, falling fairly squarely into pure action and flirting with being a military shooter, but the story comes together very well. Ashley's pretty endearing, which was very necessary to make this game work, and the Krauser fight wins back a hell of a lot of points at the end of it. Even though Resident Evil 4 shows its age in ways, especially with the tank controls and the textures, it still feels like a modern game in many ways. It really was the first of its kind, and even if it isn't your favorite, there's a good chance it's your favorite game's favorite game. The shooting, the camera angle, the method of telling a story, the art style, and quality of graphics, Resident Evil 4 was innovative, impressive, and is still wonderful to play. In a lot of ways, it feels like it really hasn't aged a day. Its constant flood of ports and re-releases, which expanded the game little by little, also helped to keep it accessible and available for new players to discover, even if years of mythologizing about it have definitely jump-scared new players. Even Resident Evil couldn't live up to 4. 5 and 6 tried and went way too far with the action, and by 7 and 8 they had abandoned the style to experiment with new stuff. But a little game called Resident Evil 2 found that balance again. Scary, tense, action-packed, and modern. It must have been daunting to stare down the remake, knowing that someday you'd be making 4 again, and competing with the best game ever made by doing so. So how do you compete with that? How do you sit down and live up to that expectation? If the game isn't at least as good as Resident Evil 4, why fucking bother? Directors Yasuhiro Anpo and Kazunori Kadoi had an answer. Just make the best game ever again. I really don't know how, beyond that, like its original version, Resident Evil 3 Remake was rushed and sacrificed at the altar for 4, but they did it. They made a game that lives up to, surpasses, and sometimes falters at being Resident Evil 4. It is a magnificent, wonderful, incredible game that is every bit as great as Resident Evil 4 was the day it came out, even if it isn't the innovative juggernaut that reshaped the industry and its image. Resident Evil 4 released in 2023 for PS4, PS5, the Xbox Series consoles, and PC, but given the never-ending legacy of the original, I expect to see many years of porting ahead. The Switch 2 is already primed for it, not to mention the PS6, Xbox 5, or whatever stupid fucking name it gets, and probably about 100 more consoles. Resident Evil 4 Remake feels for the original version of the game the way that it felt going from 3 to 4 did. It is a perfectly modern update to the game, and everything it does is pretty much perfect, hitting that action-y, horror-y, weird-y balance all over again. Games have come a long way from 2005. Full camera control, fluid movement, moving while aiming. The laser sight that indicated shots has been replaced with a crosshair. A laser is still available though to improve your accuracy, but it's gonna cost you. Resident Evil 4 brings the tension by asking you to ignore the freedoms it's given you. Its single most interesting mechanic is asking you to hold still. The crosshair starts wide, shots will not go where you want, and you really want them to hit. Only by waiting a beat does that crosshair shrink and your aim become more accurate. Moving, adjusting your sight too much, shooting, all widen that cursor again. There's a necessity to hold still in a game that has enemies constantly closing in and which are more dangerous than they ever were the first time around. Enemies are faster, hit harder, and survive more. Headshots are no longer a guaranteed way to line up a melee attack. With a shotgun or rifle, it's a good way to eliminate an enemy, and it's maybe a way to stun them out of an attack, but the game wants you to suffer. You know how you get a Ganado to fall over for a melee attack 100% of the time? Shoot them in the knees, a tiny, narrow, erratically moving target. Ganados also gained some new transformations. Sure, a scythe or a spider, which could go around and reinfect other plagas, could be a huge pain in the previous game, but now spiders are faster, mouths can insta-kill Leon and need to be shot inside their mouths where their armored skin prevents most damage, and any Ganado can suddenly start seizing up after being killed, stand back up, and come at you with a broken neck. No more headshots. Have fun. The game does give you one tool that conquers all. Not the shotgun, not the rifle, not the okay, well the rocket launcher still does, but it's expensive. But it's the knife. The knife is no longer a tool that saves some bullets in the early game, it's now a resource. So important that you can collect more shittier knives should yours need repairs. The knife does everything. Stealth kill enemies so you don't need to do anything. Yep. Stop down enemies from becoming Plaga's heads or broken necks. Sure. Parry a chainsaw to prevent instant death attacks. You bet, why the fuck not? Why not parry any melee attack? Hell, why not parry most projectiles? It'll cost you having to constantly repair the knife, upgrade its durability. It all takes away from spending precious money on upgrading guns, buying resources, buying new guns. The knife is absolutely the biggest shakeup for the game. A defensive tool that pushes the game into stealth, but also pushes it into aggression, and it is such a fantastic addition. Ammunition has also been heavily reworked. In Resident Evil 4, you usually kinda got what you needed just by playing the game. Handgun ammo was fairly plentiful, to the point that I was occasionally discarding it in the original, the others much less so, but you were rarely starving. Resident Evil 4 Remake leaves you in a desert. Ammo still appears in barrels and cabinets, usually just pistol ammo, but more often than not, you're getting gunpowder. Small resources for making pistol and shotgun ammo, and large resources for rifle and SMG ammo, although some weirder guns like the bolt thrower instead eat up spare knives. The added choice in what you get is fantastic and should let you go wild with your favorites, but the game is going to make it as tough as it can. Large resources eat up plenty of space in the attaché case, but turning them into ammo requires eating up gunpowder. Shotgun ammo is great, but its 10 gunpowder requirement means that eating into it is going to prevent you from creating anything else for a pretty good while, and heaven forbid a handgun ammo drought comes along. Nothing feels worse than locking yourself out of the good stuff in a very desperate moment. The resource management game is no longer about managing the case and what you can or can't hold. It's a whole circus of micromanaging ammo and resources under pressure. Tension isn't just rising, we're in a whole universe of constant tension and fear just for lack of ammo. Part of this resource circus comes in the form of spinels. In the original, these were the basic treasure. They sold for an okay price and appeared pretty much everywhere. In this game, there's special currency unlocked for side quests. The blue medallions that littered the early game are just the tip of the iceberg for rewards. Medallions appear in most areas, as do other unique challenges, going out of your way to fight special mini-bosses like a golden knight whose helmet doesn't come off, forcing you to shoot the little cracks in the armor, or to sell snakes and other treasures that are hard to find, plus so many more little unique things. Spinels can be spent on all sorts of important stuff: treasures to sell, the maps that show treasures, the laser sight, the Matilda, a burst-fire pistol that was unlockable the first time around. It's a very interesting little system that rewards you for spending more resources to do a little extra. I guess I should also note the shooting game. In the first game, there was a few times where you could go into a little target range hosted by the merchant for some little bonuses. Here, doing it provides you with keychains from the gacha machine, each of which provides a small passive bonus, more ammo of certain types dropping and the like. It's a small thing, but it's another cute reward for playing into the minigame. Another little thing to make note of is the world design. In exchange for the densely detailed and rich areas of this game, and the fidelity of course, the game has drastically scaled the world back. Many areas are outright cut or combined with others, including some iconic moments like the ride on the gondola ski lift thing. However, the game never feels lacking in the moment. The denseness of areas and enemies is more than made up for any loss, and makes the overall game tighter and more compact. Ashley has also seen some changes. One, she's so fucking ridiculously cute. And this is gameplay. People for years have whined about Ashley screaming, "Leon!" This is a really mean trick to make her more endearing. It works very effectively, but so does getting rid of the wait and place commands that let you mostly ignore her, instead being replaced with a keep your distance command. She's pretty good at keeping herself out of trouble. Not perfect, obviously, but to a degree that you don't always need to keep an eye on her, and lastly, she's just generally more helpful. There's way more areas where you need to boost her over ledges to open doors or have her hold switches for you, and a very intense fight involving a wrecking ball. She feels better integrated and is around much more often, gets kidnapped a lot less. She's really great this time around. I think that covers most of the basics, but the Mercenaries is back again too, although it did come in the form of several updates post-launch. Mercenaries follows the same base formula, but is quite the action-packed scramble this time around, given the new mechanics. Enemies are more numerous, and the many bosses of the game show up frequently, and the final map this time is based on the Saddler final boss construction area. Mercenaries is really great. My only minor issue, one pointed out by my friend Grant, is that the game will aggressively spawn enemies anywhere you aren't looking, which can definitely lead to some cheap shots occasionally, although the sheer carnage gives you a lot of resources to work with. I found getting A's and even S's to be quite easy. The selection of characters is more or less the same, although there is a big addition in Mayhem mode, a unique powered up state every character can get to by collecting power-ups or just by getting kills. Leon and Ada get faster and stronger, Luis can plant dynamite which decimates entire groups of enemies, although it does have quite a bit of a cooldown. Krauser has been overhauled entirely, he can combo his knife attacks comically well, which lets him just plow through the early waves of mercenaries with nothing but his knife, and has a bow that fires explosive arrows which are quite strong, and Mayhem's into his mutant form which can decimate groups with a single swing. Hunk gets unlimited ammo and doesn't have to reload for a while, letting him just hold down the trigger on his super SMG for half a minute. Love him almost as much as Krauser. And Wesker is really weird. No melee weapon, but he can counter most any attack and absolutely destroys enemies that he counters. Although he's stuck exclusively with slow heavy pistols that make him kinda bad without the counters. His Mayhem just lets you mash to teleport around insta-killing enemies. I'm sure if you've mastered the art of the parry, he's the best character, but he feels impossible if you're not good at that. I was surprisingly quite happy with the Mercenaries. The map selection is a bit small, especially given the updates it took to get there, but it's an incredibly fast-paced and fun mode, and the character selection offers so much variety that even the relatively limited map selection offers a good amount of replayability. Now add co-op, please. Thank you. I don't really know what needs to be said about how Resident Evil 4 looks. I was 10,000% blown away. The lighting and especially shadows look incredible. The game is dark, but constantly drawing attention with the light. I don't think this is just me being easily impressed, even though I don't play a lot of modern games. It's fucking gorgeous. The slightly scaled back maps have led to worlds that feel real. There's no odd size discrepancies or notable difference in interactable and non-interactable lighting anymore, and it only impresses more with weather effects like the rain. Little details litter every area in this game. The game is much gorier than the original. Enemies get more mangled and disfigured, but there's also a general rot. Dead animals are prevalent through the village especially, and it shows the rot that's infected everything due to the plagas. The realism does have one awkward side effect that's been beaten absolutely to death. Yellow paint. Anything interactable needs to be awkwardly differentiated with yellow paint. Someone went and painted this barrel, this counterweight. I can understand why it exists, but the game really doesn't need it. It's still very linear, and for the most part, the level design and lighting do plenty to guide you around as you need to. There's rarely a moment where it's like, oh, thank God for the yellow paints. It's surprising that a game that's typically so clever and fairly difficult feels the need to dumb itself down some. The yellow paint memes have gotten to be a bit much now though, but I figured I had to touch on it at least a little. Humans and monsters especially look fantastic. God, they made Giganti look so cool. And the realistic with just a touch of fantasy style on the humans looks fantastic. Ashley is so fucking cute, but I also love how great Luis looks especially. There is one minor issue, and it's one that most games still struggle with. Hair is very, very hard. I think the dark-haired characters fare much better, like Ada and Luis, but Leon and Ashley both look uncannily shiny at times. Perhaps darkening their hair a few shades would have helped that issue, especially because it's always front and center with those two characters. Music, fucking incredible. Have you heard Salazar's fight music? Jesus Christ, they cooked. Voices have also been changed, some for the better, some for the worse. Wesker is so bad. I miss his nasally autism voice. He felt so cool and calculated at all times. I'm a bit mixed on Ada. She feels the opposite of Wesker, maybe a bit too cool and calculated herself, even unsure. She's a lot less playful, but, I think there's a lot of times where it also works really well for her. Ashley and Leon, both incredible, no notes. The change in voices comes alongside a lot of story changes in minor ways. Some events are shuffled around, but characters are much, much more fleshed out this time. The big star? Luis. Already the best character in the game, he's very fun in the first game. He's even more so here. He's a bit meaner at first, looking out exclusively for himself, but equally dealing with an endless guilt for his role in the Plagos, desperately looking for redemption. He lives longer, sticks with Leon longer, abandons his goal to protect Ashley and Leon several times over, and even pulls Ada into his little quest. And he has a little self-romanticization with Don Quixote, declaring Leon his Sancho. Even in his last moments, he wants for being a noble knight, fixing his mistakes and looking for reassurance. I teared up a little at this fucking game. This improved storytelling also extends to lore, usually via notes. Lots and lots of notes. But truthfully, interesting ones that give insight to various things. One of Salazar's housekeepers becomes his right hand out of loyalty to his father. Salazar was always an awful little shit. Killing the monster she became, that's your brooch. The history of the Salazars is fully explained, really. Prior generations made the wacky castle, the paranoid warmonger filling it with traps, the artist crafting its maze, collectors piling treasures and trash throughout. The story in general benefits from the improved characters and interactions, but also, fuck me, these cutscenes are so good. The setup remains the same, although there's a lot more build-up. The initial walk to the Hunter's Lodge is gorgeous and shadowy, but immediately hints at how weird things are, perhaps a little too immediately, showing the odd totems and the rotting animals that the Plagas have spread. It's foreboding and unnerving for sure, like you might just get attacked at any moment, but the original game held that card until the first encounter, which is also now just a cutscene. I was a bit disappointed at first, but the Hunter's Lodge is brilliantly detailed with carcasses, bones, blood smears, totems, and the game takes the opportunity to surprise you. After going through the basement, vision limited due to hanging rags and cluttered shelves on top of the darkness, loud footsteps start above you. The second you turn the corner, the Ganado pops out with a snapped neck lunging at you. You haven't had an opportunity to learn this new game yet. He's fast. I was genuinely terrified and struggling to aim, and I half knew what the game would look like. Blinded by my own expectations and a new enemy type, although it does kinda shoot its load on the first Plaga variant early. It took quite a while to see them in the original game. For everything different though, some things are the same. The initial explosion of Ganados in the town square is more hectic and chaotic, if only for the new mechanics and your mobility, but plays out exactly the same. Going for the shotgun brings out the chainsaw early. He has a new design. His head seems wider but flatter, almost like it's crushed. A big change from just being a Texas chainsaw rift, and his eyes bulge out a lot more. But you can also parry the chainsaw, which is really, really funny. After the bingo bell, we get a fantastic title drop. I think this is so cool.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
It's framed perfectly, but also comes at just the right time. A declaration that the old and the new in this game are going to live side by side, and you're probably not going to know entirely what to expect. The farm in the next section is similar. There's now a mill on the property, which serves its own little area with a shop, and after making it to the barn, another new enemy is introduced. A giant Ganado with a bullhead over its face and a sledgehammer, which are rare but recurring mini-bosses that mostly serve to fill out the fights a little, and to be an extra challenge. Plus, notably, the minigun guys are replaced by guys like this with automatic crossbows and boar's heads, which fits a little better than the zombie man with a minigun. With the removal of QuickTime events, a few sections die out entirely, the boulder mainly, but also the giant statue chase in the castle too, which is kind of a shame because it was absolutely the funniest thing that happened in the game. It's so ridiculous that it kind of tied the whole castle together. Other little sections are missing too. The ride on the gondolas stuck out to me. I always found that bit quite fun, but it does get a little nod with the broken gondola just outside of the mansion. I already gushed about Luis, but I love how awful he is in this first scene, outright outright bailing on Leon, but being so charming while doing so. When Leon and Luis escape, you're left with nothing. The factory is odd. It's a forced stealth section, but I think it's not so much about the stealth. Most enemies aren't really a problem. I think they really wanted you to know how good the knife is, and it's pretty fun too. The game is actually a lot more puzzle dense than the original, with a little automatically closing door thing here. But especially in the castle, or for bonuses, they seem to love going back to the original trilogy in that regard. Speeding ahead some through sections that largely just serve to expand old ideas, like the hatchery, which is just bigger, or the still fantastic cliffs, or the manor, which is layered with so many tragic details about Mendez, like the crazed writings on his beloved pictures that paint him as genuinely gone. The lake is a big one. The fight with Lago is virtually identical, but a little less clumsy, a little less quick-time event-y, perhaps, but the lake is the most fascinating reinvention in the game. It's been converted into the Wind Waker. Leon can freely pilot the boat. The goal is to get 2 statue heads that look extremely heavy and carry them around with you, and to place them on 2 pedestals to progress. They're somewhere, hidden by puzzles, but so are a bunch of pit stops, a chicken coop, a small shrine in a cave, and the shop. It's one of those things. The game cuts a good few areas from the game. Maps are still the same size, if not slightly smaller to be more realistically proportional, but everything is so dense. There's a small moment of freedom on the lake, something the original never really had. It's very exciting to explore. Speaking of great changes, Giganti is basically the same, although the wolf cutscene is fucking fire. I was almost in tears laughing. But the big new Giganti mechanic is a simple change that makes the fight so much more dynamic. After the initial knockdown, its Plaga remains revealed. It's kind of adorable in a gross way, acting out all the movements that it's making the Giganti do and remaining a permanent weak point. The Giganti is faster, more aggressive, and instead of smashing the huts that you try to hide in, it throws them at Leon. It's dangerous, but keeping your focus off of the battle at hand and onto the Plaga to end it quicker is such cool design, pulling you in so many directions at once. The church also restrains itself from showing off Saddler, and I mean, Ashley. You know, she's Ashley. Also around here you get the bolt thrower, a crossbow that lets you retrieve its bolts unless you make them explosive. It seems like it should be really cool, like the crossbow in Half-Life 2, and every time I used it I found out it did almost nothing. Oh, the Plagas heads are around too. Most of them not too different, but the addition of the mouths later on, very nice. Oh Luis, I missed you. He's not as flirty, the infamous fantastic line is gone, but he is more immediately heroic and more competent than last time. The cabin survival, now in a mansion, is much longer, maybe just because the enemies are harder to kill, but has a more open design to compensate. The room is designed to loop around barriers like tables, you can jump from the upper level to the lower level, and it's just a fantastic little arena, plus Luis and Ada's meeting after is great. They play really well off each other. Ada's new voice actress is excellent at exasperation, but still humors Luis with his cigarettes, although most of their interactions come a lot later. I genuinely didn't recognize that small fortress where you fight the Chainsaw Sisters. It's like this massive canyon that leads into an abandoned house. When you approach the wall, the Chainsaw Sister bursts through. Fun stuff, I love it so much, all these little twists. Instead of the gondola, Mendez is briefly made into a chase enemy like Mr. X and Nemesis before him. Invincible, slowly walking after you as Ganados try to slow Leon and Ashley down. It's a neat gimmick section, not overdone, and gets to the fight immediately after. And, they ruined the Mendez fight. Don't get me wrong, it looks cooler than hell. The fire and colors and lighting, they're fantastic. But the arena is tiny, and going to the second level just lets you lay into the eye on his neck with little opposition. The second phase had the opportunity to be so dynamic with how fast and chaotic this game can be. Instead, he hangs out on the far side of the barn throwing things at you. You run left and then you run right. Sometimes he picks up a barrel, and if you shoot it, he takes a lot of damage, but you kind of just run back and forth and shoot. Sometimes he gets up close and swings, then he goes back to throwing stuff. There's not a lot of intensity. There was such an obvious way to keep this good by doing nothing and just leaving it the same. Absolutely just rare remake L. Moving on to the castle. The castle, best part the first time? Sometimes. Best part in this game? Absolutely. Right away the mouth Plaga is introduced. It's an enemy that always makes a situation stressful, and the first one is a really cool scare. It just clings to the ceiling and swings at you. After this, they mostly just walk around, but this one knows what he's doing. The whole catapult section is unchanged, mostly, but you get to use the cannon to blow them up, which is kinda neat. The cultists are still normal Ganados, but a new additional lineup keeps things fresh. These, chieftains with skull helmets. Their heads are protected, forcing you to shoot more carefully, or less efficiently, and their screams stun Leon by aggravating his plaga, while frenzying the other Ganados. They often hang back behind crowds of other Ganados, forcing you to aim and act quickly, and appear throughout the castle, usually in pretty tricky positions to hit them on, like up on a ledge that you can't exactly reach easily. The Gardor now gets a much larger dungeon, a torture room that winds down to his room, nearly pitch black with chains and other noisemakers around. The Gardors are absolutely insane this time around, blind but completely relentless in chasing sound. This first fight wants you to be sneaky. The fight later with two Ganados is just a nightmare of swinging blades anytime you do anything. Hopefully though, they're hitting the Ganados a lot more than they are you. It might be the most frustrating 5 minutes of the game, but it's also so satisfying to get good at and pull off well. The castle is filled with cool little puzzles too, old and new. Ringing the correct dinner bells in the dining room is a new twist on the shooting the food in the right order thing. The sword puzzle's a fun little narrative you piece together instead of just swapping two swords. The original had this slightly puzzly focus in the castle, but it's very much present here. It makes the castle stand out even better. I haven't even touched on the story much, in part because it just hasn't been that different yet. Salazar's still his old self, with extra lore around showing that, yeah, this guy's awful, he always was. He does feel a little less present. He still talks a lot, but usually through speakers on walls or poles. There's fewer of those face-to-face moments. One fantastic change is making Ashley much more competent. She can take ladders by herself now. She helps you a lot more, and her separation at the castle isn't just running face first into a trap, it's Saddler exerting control over her, commanding her to kill Leon. He can almost make her do it, and she's terrified. She instead threatens herself and Saddler's plans by extension. Saddler relents, but Ashley is so distraught that she separates from Leon, worrying for him, fearing what'll happen next. She's much more relatable, she does things on her own, makes decisions. Her brief playable section in the original is doing quick time events around armor plagas and running. You feel absolutely powerless, but still fairly safe. In this game, Leon is put in a comically large cage, trapped, and Ashley could keep running, but she goes in the library to find a way to save Leon. The armors are frozen by the blue light from a, magic lantern she gets, I guess, which is kind of contrived, but actually gives her some tense and pretty scary gameplay. The knights are very fast and aggressive. They're harder to kill than the last game, outright demanding that their armor is meleeed off or very carefully shot around, and Ashley is not withstanding a single hit. They lurch at you, and all you can do is freeze them for a few seconds before they pursue her again, all while scrambling back and forth in oppressive darkness. That final moment of crawling between the swords of the knights is so tense. Nothing happens, but your heart rate sure feels like it might. I really like the new Ashley. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the castle too. The cultists are up to some weird shit. Whatever this is doesn't move, it's just a thing to look at, but it made me jump a little. It's so unnatural and odd looking. The time without Ashley is mostly filled with all new sections. The sun and moon door puzzle isn't all that hard, they just open and close opposite each other. But getting every single thing in that area requires a lot of back and forthing and odd routing to get the doors to open the way you want, and the castle even has its own Gigante, which is a very odd addition. The Gigante relentlessly hurls boulders. You run along the castle wall, fight a few enemies, let the boulders deal with the rest. We are just Lord of the Rings now. It's not a section that adds a whole ton, but I must admit, when something is this chaotic, it can be a nice break from the more deliberate castle sections that take up most of this part of the game. And watching the big guy fall, it's cool. One oddity is that the sewers are basically gone. Leon is dropped in the big pit right after Ashley drinks the gross water in a pretty chilling scene, but he stumbles around the caves in and out pretty quickly. The Novistadors aren't nearly as terrifying as before. They camouflage better, but move more predictably, and their grab can be countered with a knife. You have to be pretty bad to actually take the giant hit from their acid attacks, but they do make up for it in sheer numbers, frequently respawning in the areas they occupy, although they are a much lower tier threat now and are pretty limited to the short cave section in this big staircase room thing. You can also go a touch out of your way to get an assault rifle here, objectively overpowered, but chewing through valuable rifle ammo so quickly that it's genuinely infeasible except in emergencies, which is fair. If it was actually good, the game would be completely over. I think Verdugo is a fight with a nice touch-up too. He's almost the same, but a lot more aggressive, but the important part is timing. In the original, when you knocked over a nitrogen tank, he'd appear to run directly into it. Here, nitrogen showers litter the area, pulling the switch sprays nitrogen after a beat. He actually needs to be lured into them, and that beat gives him a crucial second to close the distance and potentially kill you. These nitrogen showers also recharge on an agonizingly slow cycle. Verdugo is still killed in the same way, and is a tough challenge unless you're really invested in upgrades, but he absolutely nails that tension angle, just oppressing you and forcing you to play near him at all times. It's such a good fight. You may have noticed something else. Luis isn't dead. As you reach the mines, he finds Leon, delivering the suppressant that keeps him alive for a little while longer, and he stays and fights with you the whole time, playing off Leon really well and becoming a welcome companion. The mines are ultimately still the mines. There's the double Giganti fight, but the zipline cheese is replaced with Luis taking some of the heat, and the Gigantis are actually smart enough to not just fall in the lava when you flip the switch. You need to stun them on the panel before they're able to fall in, and the armored one is immune until the first dies, at which point Luis blows off its armor, making it vulnerable. It's a much more balanced and well-rounded battle against the two big guys. The minecart might be the single biggest improvement in the game. Honestly, it's one of my favorite sections. The original was a gimmicky arena, just a weird little moving place in time where you do the normal gameplay. This time it's a chaotic gimmick section. The cart moves fast and you need to juggle killing enemies in their own carts, shooting obstacles, shooting switches to move off of dead ends on the rails, tilting the cart against corners, and this is all while Luis and Leon banter. It's fast and thrilling the whole time, and when Luis breaks the break, Leon shows the same exasperation that Ada had for Luis. They make such a great pair. Don Quixote and Sancho, if you will. I can't even lie, Luis's death got to me. Not at the hands of Saddler, but Krauser. Darkside Chronicles didn't happen in this timeline, or I guess it did, but Leon wasn't there. Krauser and Leon have never met, but the stakes are made personal fast, and it's Luis, not Ada, who saves Leon one last time. Leon is quick to assure Luis as he goes that he was a good knight. I really got attached to that goofball Spaniard, goddammit. It helps that even this first Krauser fight is good. Instead of 3 minutes of QuickTime events, the team wanted to make something fully playable and introduce the parry just for this section. It was so fun that they put it in the rest of the game. Krauser is aggressive and fast, and you often need to parry several times in a row to get your own slashes in. There's a real back and forth that's exciting as hell, and the dynamic is present again in the real fights. I can't even be mad that the statue chase is gone. The flame-throwing statue is almost as funny and a lot less ridiculous. And most of the clock tower climb is intact anyway. The elevator, the barrel stairs, here the giant spike ball stairs. And at the top, Ramon Salazar. God, watching Leon shoot him in the skull feels so good. Salazar is completely redesigned and so close to being good fights. Instead of becoming a wall, mostly stationary with big attacks to dodge, he's a tiny mass of tentacles bouncing off the walls and ceiling and floor in a really cool little arena. He gives his big speech throughout the battle, the music is fucking incredible, his attacks are fun to dodge, and he's so flighty it feels like you're constantly chasing him, and it's all ruined by him leaving these stupid zits on the floor. The whole fight asks you to look at the walls and ceilings to keep track of him, but he pukes these damn zits on the floor, touching one stunning you just long enough to miss a shot and take a hit. They may as well be invisible for how often you'll be looking down to see them, and it makes what is a cool fight frustrating and almost kinda luck dependent. Is the fight better than the original? Maybe. I think there's a lot of good going on where the original was pretty routine, but I can't shake how frustrating it got to lose to those damn zits repeatedly and have to hear the speech start over and over and over and over and over. On the way to the island, Ada and Leon have a chat that I really like. It's simple. Leon feels like everything he went through has changed him. Ada gently reminds him that he hasn't. He's still the same guy who will do anything to save anyone, even her. He wonders if she's changed, and she doesn't have a good answer. It's simple, but tells a lot about their relationship. The island was always going to be a tough sell. There was initially rumors that it would be cut from the game entirely, which is ridiculous. Like the original, exhaustion sets in, and there's a whole lot of combat. There are small twists. Turrets with a wall of a laser targeting system block paths needing to be re-angled to get past, but most of what goes on here really hasn't changed, at least on the exterior map. Maps tend to be laid out very similarly to how they were before. The little turret enclave, the short section with the helicopter, abridged slightly but mostly intact. What saves the island is the same as the last time. The regenerators are back and better than ever. The lab is just fantastic this time around. I wouldn't really call the original lab atmospheric. There's the funny Burning Man jump scare and the regenerators are tense, but not scary necessarily. This time around, the lab is eerily quiet. There's a small handful of enemies as you enter, but not that many. The lab's power is divided into two halves, one well lit, one pitch black, and progress depends on switching it back and forth, and whichever side you're on, it's always the dark one. The game isn't nice enough to give you the thermal scope as quickly as it did before, nor is it nice enough to give you a warning. In a dark room, you grab the keycard, you turn around, it's already there. The regenerators are so unsettling, perfectly designed. They have the same basic features, but are made to be bloated, stumbling, almost like melting. When their legs are removed, they slither across the ground even more snake-like before. They lurch awkwardly with every step, and the first time one stretches and grabs you from a safe distance, you're fucking terrified. There's really not a complaint I have. They're perfect, terrifying, and the spiked ones are even better. No longer just an upgraded variant, but a trap. Killing a regenerator should cause it to explode, but sometimes the Plagas will rush to regenerate it a final time with the final Plaga hanging out in its head. Probably the hardest spot to hit thanks to its crooked lurching walk. The game doesn't indicate this in any way if you aren't watching after you kill one. I found out because I started wandering off looking for rifle ammo or something just to immediately get grabbed again. The regenerators just get so much to do. There's an incredibly tense moment in a series of narrow kitchen hallways with a black advanced regenerator, and an even more tense moment with the regenerators hiding in body bags in a freezer. The thermal scope can still see them if you still have it equipped, but if you don't realize that, one wrong nudge and it's time to fight one again. Ashley also gets a lot of time to shine on the island, once the duo are reunited. After everything, she's gone from a scared kid to trying her best to be someone Leon can rely on back. Not perfectly, but endearingly close. She takes charge in using the wrecking ball to smash down a wall as Leon defends her in one of the game's most chaotic arenas. I hope whoever decided this arena needed a whole brood of spider plagas feels really good about themselves. She still gets into trouble. The game forces you to go through a door she holds open, and the second you do, she's captured, forcing you to rush to save her, but I don't know, she's really endearing when she tells Leon she wants to become an agent like him, maybe become his partner. He laughs off her little fantasy, saying she'll put him out of a job. It's so hard not to like Ashley and feel for her as Saddler takes her back, attempting again to get her to kill Leon, which she resists entirely. There's not a whole ton left, basically just Krauser and Saddler. Krauser remains a highlight, of course he does. He lacks a personal history with Leon, but I think he's handled quite well. The botched operation haunts him. When he tries to aggravate Leon, he tells him that he can't save anyone, projecting his own failure onto Leon. Krauser respects Leon as a fellow soldier. He's vicious and intense, crazed with power, but when he's beaten, he trusts Leon to end his suffering and seemingly recognizes Leon's ability to get the job done. The fight and arena are largely the same as before, but centered on parrying to deflect his ambushes and his mutant arm attacks. He's fast and aggressive. It's just as good as before. I think it might be even better than before. The Plagas removal has some neat visuals and they don't overdo the surrealism too much. Anyway, Saddler. It's the same fight, but he looks cooler. You run around, shoot his leg eyes, shoot his face eye, you can still cheese it with a rocket. It really do be Saddler. A solid fight that didn't change much, nor did it need to, but which has a new finale, with Saddler morphing into a mass of tentacles surrounding an egg with Saddler inside. Hot damn, it looks so cool. You shoot it for a while and Ada throws you the special rocket to end it. This final cutscene is so badass. I absolutely love the idea of using Saddler's staff to finish him off, and with that, it's the jet ski out and it's over. Ada does get a little more to do. She's more attached to Leon in this universe. She earnestly offers him a ride, to which he responds with the worst line ever.
I think we both know this. It's where we go our separate ways.
More importantly, she refuses to hand the Plaga sample off to Wesker, charting her own path. Although Wesker doesn't mind, he's gotten what he needs from Krauser, which is a fun way to loop in that weird plotline from Assignment Ada in the original version of Separate Ways. But of course, there's also separate ways. Assignment Ada is left out, obviously, because it wasn't very good. Ada is... she has a hook shot, and man, it's fun to use it to get around, but it's more fun to score melee hits from almost any range with it. And a special charm for the attaché case that she can get from the shop lets her steal shields from shielded enemies with it. There's never been a bad game with a hook shot, that's all I'm saying. Other than that, she's faster, can use her scanner eye to see footprints for some puzzles, has the bad shotgun, which in this case is pretty good since knee shots are so valuable, and works through a mixture of new and reused content. This mode is DLC this time around, $10, and although I don't like to correlate price and playtime over quality, it is surprisingly long, 5 hours or so, which is a surprisingly robust addition to a game that's only about 12, basically the same length as the original, and the reused content is usually mixed up in little ways that keep it fresh. Take the castle, the section with the catapults, iconic. Now turn it around. Having the high ground gives you an advantage you didn't have before, and the hookshot lets you take that high ground back at any time you want. Separate ways isn't easy per se. Ada is much frailer than Leon, but she's also a professional. She feels more powerful and plays off any situation coolly. There isn't a ton to say story-wise. You know about where Ada was, the church ringing the bell, saving Leon from Mendez, but Luis is all over here. He's flirty with Ada, and she's willing to play along, but still maintains some distance, although she clearly comes to care about Luis, even if that's something she struggles to process, giving him endless chances to get her the amber, saving him, and he saves her occasionally too. She also has a plaga in her, and the amber containing the dominant plaga sample that Wesker wants aggravates it. Ada and Luis get a lot of moments together. From the moment she rescues him from captivity towards the start of the DLC, they strike a goofy, flirty pose. Ada is too skilled to take this seriously, Luis is too... he's Luis. But they bond throughout. Luis's guilt is even more on display. As a suppressant burns in a fire, he runs in to save it, and Ada has to pull him out and talk some sense into him. He's made it once, he can do it again. One of Separate Ways' more unique elements, new to the remake, is the presence of one of Salazar's hands, Verdugo's counterpart, Passanta, who can utilize Ada's plaga to force her to hallucinate, and acts as a recurring boss throughout the chapters, all of which play with some interesting visuals and gameplay tweaks, as Passanta teleports around the arena, creates shadow clones, and stuns Ada with giant ground pounds. Most of the early DLC is remixed content. The castle wall, the village to ring the bell, the factory. You get the explosive crossbow here, which is a fun power weapon, if way too slow to reload. It tends to be a little dicey. And the Giganti fight on the farm. It is a Giganti fight, but there's a really cool gimmick, being able to hook shot onto either barn to escape from it, and to get a clean shot at its plaga once it's revealed, but it will slowly tear down the building as you do, pulling away that advantage if you try to utilize it too much. Some of the little bits scrapped from Leon's campaign rejoin us with Ada, the drill, the laser haul, so it's cool to see these all come back to offer some unique set pieces for Ada. Separate Ways doesn't hit a major diversion point until 5 chapters in. Unique set pieces and sections appear here and there, but the sewers from the original game are reimagined as beautiful marble aqueducts swarming with novistadors swimming through the water. It's not a particularly unique stretch, but it feels nice to be somewhere familiar but new, which has been absent from this DLC so far. One big oddity is the final Passanta fight. I feel like they wanted to get to U3, whose absence was missed in the main game, but they didn't really know how to pull it off. Passanta gets shot a few times and just becomes U3, pulls off the robe, and BAM! It feels extremely awkward for both U3 and Passanta to be merged into one, and the fight just isn't great. The arena is just a small slice of cliffside. It's not very dynamic or interesting. It's just a war of attrition against a cool-looking monster. Another unique section comes in the form of this military installation with turrets that need to be disabled to get past a killing field and get into some chaotic combat. It's good, but leads into the big new section of the DLC, an underground lab with a new enemy, the invincible gigantic Martinico, who serves to enable some chase sequences in the cramped hallways leading up to the laser hallway, which honestly fits Ada better than Leon. Having a few chase sequences is a nice little detour to something this game hasn't had a ton of, but they are segments that aren't immensely interactive. You don't have to do a lot to get through the chases, just kind of wiggle back and forth as you move away from the enemy, and you know, at least the cutscenes are cool, like Martinico's death, pretty awesome. Really, all there is left is Saddler again, whose human form is actually kinda brutal. His tentacles frequently caught me off guard with their range, he fires bullets back at you, sprays acid, and his eye weak point in his mouth is very small. The fight is quite fun, frantic, and difficult, and I like the way he calmly speaks his sermon as he tries to prevent things from going any further. Then it's a time section while Leon fights Saddler, which is fun and frantic, especially as Saddler goes into his final form and his tentacles start interfering with Ada's ability to get around. I was really impressed with Separate Ways. Ada is really different from Leon in some cool ways. It's a lot longer than its cost would imply. Rescues a bunch of cut sections from the original game, looks fucking fantastic, obviously, and has way more Luis. It's a very nice addition to Remake, perfectly extending it just enough. I have some questions about the U3 thing especially, but this was very obviously always the plan for this DLC to come out, and it slots in perfectly in both the gameplay feel and in like the tying the whole story together with Ada's perspective thing. Resident Evil 4 is fantastic. I was a doubter. I thought the original would be a wall nobody could live up to. They did. Sometimes going beyond the original, sometimes not, but trying their hardest, and balancing out to be at least as good, and I could argue either way depending on the day. The way the world has been reinvented, expanded, densened, shrunk down, resized, it's so fun to go back and see the familiar and the unfamiliar. The story has been cleaned up a whole fucking lot. Ashley and Luis especially benefit, but Krauser I think works better too. The dialogue is silly and campy a lot less often than the original version, but works. The game tries to bring back puzzles, has more atmospheric sections. Nothing is the same, but everything is familiar. The game looks fantastic. I admittedly don't play a ton of cutting-edge modern games to be fair, but I was so impressed, and the music is fantastic too. I think, like the original, it's a near-perfect game. It falters a hell of a lot less on the island thanks to some really great segments, which doesn't hurt, and the village and castle are obviously fucking fantastic. The greatness of the original is breathe new life, modern and fresh, but the two live side by side as equals. I love both to pieces. This video's gotten so long, man. If I talk for this long about Mario Kart World, I'm fucking quitting YouTube. Play Resident Evil 4 both versions. Please do yourself a favor.
I fought a war and I learned how to win. But how do you fight when the enemy's within? Find your pride, go deeper inside for the fire that will light your way. The ones you trust can one day betray. You're the hunter and then you're the prey. You pay the cost, it all feels lost. Then you hear a voice inside you say